Dr. Elena Vasquez had always been different from other kids. While her friends played video games, she spent hours trying to decode the strange symbols her grandmother drew in old notebooks. Her grandmother used to tell stories about ancient civilizations that spoke in whispers only the wind could understand. Back then, Elena thought these were just fairy tales. She had no idea how wrong she was. 15 years later, Elena sat in her cramped office at the University of Chicago, surrounded by stacks of books that reached the ceiling. Coffee cups from 3 different days cluttered her desk, and sticky notes covered every inch of her computer monitor. She looked tired, but her eyes sparkled with the kind of excitement that comes from being on the edge of something big. The mystery had started 5 years ago when archaeologists found strange stone tablets in caves around the world. These weren't ordinary caves either. They were hidden in places so remote that most people would never find them. One was discovered deep in the Amazon rainforest, another in a frozen cave in Siberia, and others in deserts, mountains, and islands, across 6 different continents. What made these tablets so special? The symbols carved into them were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. They weren't Egyptian hieroglyphs or ancient Greek letters. They weren't Chinese characters or Sanskrit script. These symbols seemed to come from somewhere else entirely, somewhere that existed long before humans learned to write. Most of Elena's colleagues thought she was wasting her time. These symbols probably don't mean anything, they would say. Maybe they're just decorative patterns or random scratches made by ancient people who were bored. But Elena couldn't let it go. Something about these symbols called to her like they were trying to tell her a secret that had been buried for thousands of years. Night after night, Elena worked alone in her office. She compared the symbols from different tablets, looking for patterns. She measured the spacing between marks and counted how often certain shapes appeared together. Slowly, very slowly, she began to see connections that no one else had noticed. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening in October. Elena had been working for 14 hours straight, her eyes burning from staring at her computer screen. She was about to give up for the night when she noticed something incredible. The symbols weren't just random marks. They followed rules, just like any language. But these rules were different from anything she had studied before. Most languages work in straight lines. You say one word, then another, building sentences like stacking blocks. But this ancient language seemed to work in circles and spirals. Words connected to each other in ways that created meaning on multiple levels at the same time. It was like each sentence was actually 3 or 4 sentences woven together into one beautiful, complex pattern. Elena's heart started beating faster. She grabbed her notebook and began writing frantically. If she was right about these patterns, she might be able to translate some of the shorter inscriptions. Her hands shook as she worked through the symbols one by one, applying the rules she had discovered. The first sentence she translated was simple, but strange. The bridge between worlds rests in the voice of understanding. Elena read it 3 times, wondering what it could mean. Bridge between worlds, what worlds? She tried another inscription. Those who speak the old words shall hear the call from beyond the veil. A chill ran down Elena's spine. These weren't just random ancient sayings. They felt like instructions, like someone had left them on purpose for future generations to find. But who would do such a thing? And why? Elena stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the city lights below. Cars moved like tiny glowing dots through the streets, and people hurried along sidewalks, completely unaware that someone in a small office above them might have just made one of the most important discoveries in human history. She returned to her desk and picked up one of the stone tablet photographs. This particular tablet had been found in a cave in Peru, carved into rock that geologists said was over 10,000 years old. The symbols seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights of her office, almost like they were alive. Elena decided to try something that felt a little crazy. She had reconstructed what she believed was the pronunciation of some of these ancient words. What if she tried to speak them out loud? Maybe hearing the language would help her understand it better. She cleared her throat and looked at her translation notes. The first phrase she had decoded seemed like a good place to start. Taking a deep breath, Elena began to speak the ancient words aloud. The sounds felt strange on her tongue, like she was trying to pronounce music instead of language. As the last syllable left her lips, something impossible happened. The air in her office began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement on a summer day. Elena blinked hard, thinking her tired eyes were playing tricks on her. But the shimmer didn't go away. If anything, it was getting stronger. The coffee cups on her desk started to vibrate slightly. The fluorescent light above her flickered. And somewhere, just at the edge of her hearing, Elena could swear she heard something that sounded almost like singing. She looked down at the ancient symbols on her desk, then back at the shimmering air in front of her. For the first time in her life, Elena wondered if some discoveries were too big for one person to handle alone. But it was too late to turn back now. Whatever she had started by speaking those ancient words, there was no way to undo it. The shimmer in the air grew brighter, and Elena realized that her quiet life as a university professor was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. Elena stood frozen in her office, watching the shimmering air grow brighter and brighter. Her logical mind tried to find explanations. Maybe the old building's heating system was acting up. Maybe she was having some kind of hallucination from drinking too much coffee and sleeping too little. But deep down she knew something extraordinary was happening. The shimmer began to take shape, forming what looked like a doorway made of dancing light. Colors that Elena had never seen before swirled together like oil on water, creating patterns that hurt her eyes to look at directly. The singing sound she had heard earlier grew louder, turning into something that sounded almost like music from another world. Elena's first instinct was to run. Every sensible part of her brain screamed that she should grab her keys and get out of the building as fast as possible. But her curiosity was stronger than her fear. This was what she had been, searching for her entire career without even knowing it. Whatever was about to happen, she had to see it through. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, making Elena's breath visible in small puffs of vapor. The papers on her desk began to flutter even though there was no wind. Books fell off, shelves with soft thudding sounds. And then, through the swirling portal of light, a figure began to emerge. At first, Elena could only see a silhouette. The figure was tall and slender, moving with a grace that seemed almost like floating. As it stepped fully into her office, the portal behind it began to fade, taking the strange music with it. Elena found herself face to face with something that challenged everything she thought she knew about the universe. The being standing in her office was clearly not human, but it wasn't the scary monster that movies had taught her to expect. Instead, it looked like what humans might become after a million years of evolution. Its limbs were longer and more elegant than human proportions, and its skin had an unusual quality that reminded Elena of pearls or moonlight on water. The being's skin seemed to change color slightly with each movement, shifting from pale silver to soft gold to hints of blue. But it was the eyes that truly captivated Elena. They were larger than human eyes, filled with an intelligence that felt ancient and deep. Looking into those eyes was like staring into the night sky and seeing not emptiness but infinite possibility. Elena realized she was holding her breath. The being wore clothing that defied description. It looked like someone had woven starlight into fabric, creating garments that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The material moved like liquid silk but caught the fluorescent lights of Elena's office in ways that created tiny sparkles and flashes. For several long seconds, neither Elena nor the mysterious visitor moved. Elena's heart was beating so fast she was sure the being could hear it. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of her desk, trying to steady herself. All her years of studying ancient civilizations had not prepared her for this moment. Then, the being spoke and Elena's world changed forever. The voice was unlike anything Elena had ever heard. It had a musical quality that reminded her of wind chimes mixed with the sound of water flowing over stones. But what shocked Elena even more than the beautiful voice was the language it spoke. The being was using the exact same ancient words that Elena had been studying for years. "You speak the dead language of our ancestors?" the being exclaimed, and Elena could hear amazement and disbelief in every syllable. Elena's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound came out. When she finally managed to speak, her voice cracked like a teenager's. You can understand what I said earlier? The being tilted its head in a gesture that was surprisingly human-like. Not only can I understand it, the visitor replied, in the ancient tongue, but you pronounced it almost perfectly. How is this possible? My people abandoned this language thousands of your years ago. Elena's mind raced. This creature knew the language she had spent years trying to decode. More than that, it seemed to consider the language part of its heritage. Your people? Elena managed to ask, still speaking in the ancient words that now flowed more naturally from her tongue. I am called Zaraki, the being said, and Elena noticed that when it spoke its name, the skin on its face briefly flashed a warm golden color. I am what you might call an explorer or a student. My people have been watching your world for a very long time, but we have never had direct contact. We thought it was too dangerous. Elena slowly moved around her desk, never taking her eyes off Zaraki. Dangerous for us or for you? For both, Zaraki replied sadly. Long ago, my ancestors visited this world. They tried to help your people, but their presence changed the natural course of your development. Some humans began to worship them as gods. Others became afraid and violent. My people realized they were doing more harm than good, so they retreated to a place between worlds. Between worlds? Elena asked, though part of her already understood. The portal, the shimmering air, the way Zaraki had appeared from nowhere, it all began to make sense. Zaraki gestured to where the portal had been. We live in a space that touches your world but exists separately from it. We have been watching and learning but never interfering. Until tonight. Elena sank into her desk chair, overwhelmed by the implications. What changed tonight? You did, Zaraki said, and now her skin showed flashes of what Elena interpreted as excitement. When you spoke our ancestral language, you activated ancient technology that my people left behind. The stone tablets you have been studying, they were never meant to be just historical records. They were beacons, designed to call us if someone ever learned to speak our old words. Elena looked at the photographs of stone tablets scattered across her desk. So all this time, I was accidentally sending you messages? More than messages, Zaraki explained. You were proving that your species had evolved enough to understand concepts that most civilizations never grasp. The language you learned, it requires a special way of thinking. Most beings can only think in straight lines, but this language requires thinking in circles and connections all at once. Elena felt a strange mixture of pride and terror. She had spent years feeling like an outsider in her own field, convinced that she was chasing something that might not even exist. Now she discovered that not only did it exist, but she had accidentally become the first human to make contact with an alien civilization. What happens now? Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Zaraki's expression became serious, her skin shifting to deeper, more muted colors. Now everything changes. Elena stared at Zaraki, trying to process what she had just heard. Everything changes. What did that mean exactly? Her mind was already spinning from discovering that aliens existed, that they had been watching Earth, and that she had somehow become the first human to contact them. Now Zaraki was telling her that this was just the beginning. I need to sit down, Elena said, even though she was already sitting. She felt dizzy, like the world was tilting sideways. Actually, I think I need something stronger than coffee. Zaraki moved closer, her movements so smooth they seemed almost like dancing. I understand this is overwhelming for you. When I first learned that a human had decoded our ancestral language, I could barely believe it myself. Wait, Elena said, holding up her hand. You said you learned about it. That means other people, other beings like you, they know about me. Zaraki's skin shifted to what Elena was beginning to recognize as embarrassment, a soft purple color that reminded her of twilight. Well, that's actually a problem. I wasn't supposed to make contact with you at all. Elena felt her stomach, Drop. What do you mean? My people have very strict rules about interacting with humans, Zaraki explained, sitting down on the floor in front of Elena's desk with surprising grace. When your translation activated our beacon system, it sent alerts to our Council of Elders. They were planning to send a team to quietly remove all traces of our language from your world and erase your memories of discovering it. Erase my memories? Elena's voice came out as a squeak. They can do that? They can, but I convinced them to let me come first, Zaraki said quickly. I told them I needed to assess the situation personally. What I didn't tell them was that I've been studying your species for years and I was hoping to find someone exactly like you. Elena rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. Someone like me? What's so special about me? I'm just a linguist who spends too much time alone with old books and coffee stains. Zaraki's skin brightened to a warm golden color that Elena interpreted as excitement. But that's exactly what makes you special. Do you realize what you accomplished? You decoded a language that was designed to be impossible for linear thinking minds to understand. Most species in the galaxy never develop the ability to think in the quantum patterns required for our ancestral tongue. Quantum patterns? Elena asked, though she was starting to understand what Zaraki meant. You mean the way the words connect to each other on multiple levels at once? Exactly. Zaraki's enthusiasm was infectious, and Elena found herself leaning forward despite her confusion. Most beings can only process information in sequential order, first this thought, then that thought, then the next one. But our language requires holding multiple concepts in your mind simultaneously, and seeing how they relate to each other in circular patterns. Elena thought about the hours she had spent trying to understand the ancient symbols. She remembered how frustrated she had felt when she tried to translate them like regular languages. The breakthrough had only come when she stopped thinking in straight lines and started seeing the connections between words as webs of meaning. So humans can think in these quantum patterns? Elena asked. Some can, Zaraki replied. And you're apparently one of them. That's incredibly rare even among my own people. Most of us lost that ability generations ago as we became more technological and less intuitive. Elena stood up and began pacing around her small office. Okay, let me get this straight. Your people visited Earth thousands of years ago, left these stone tablets as some kind of test, then retreated to another dimension to watch us. And now I've accidentally passed the test by learning your language. That's a simplified version. But yes, Zaraki said. Though the tablets weren't exactly a test, they were more like a safety mechanism. My ancestors hoped that if humanity ever evolved to the point where someone could understand our language, it would mean your species was ready for contact. But your elders don't think we're ready, Elena said. Zaraki's skin shifted to a troubled, gray color. They're afraid. The last time my people interacted directly with humans, it didn't go well. Some humans treated us like gods and stopped thinking for themselves. Others became terrified and aggressive. My ancestors decided that contact was too dangerous for both species. Elena stopped pacing and looked directly at Zaraki. But you don't agree with them? I think times have changed, Zaraki said carefully. Your species has evolved in ways my elders don't fully understand. You have global communication now, scientific methods for understanding new discoveries, and individuals like you who can bridge the gap between different ways of thinking. What exactly are you suggesting? Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew. Zaraki stood up, her height making Elena feel small in her own office. I'm suggesting that maybe it's time for careful, limited contact. Not the dramatic revelation that would cause panic, but quiet exchanges of knowledge between selected individuals from both our species. Elena felt her heart racing again. And I would be one of those selected individuals. You would be the first, Zaraki said. But Elena, you need to understand what this would mean. If you agree to work with us, your life will never be the same. You'll have to keep secrets that most humans aren't ready to know. You'll be responsible for decisions that could affect the future of both our species. Elena walked to her window and looked out at the city below. Somewhere down there, millions of people were going about their normal lives. completely unaware that someone from another world was standing in a university office just above their heads. The weight of that responsibility felt enormous. "What, if I say no?" Elena asked without turning around. "Then I return to my people and they proceed with their original plan," Zaraki said sadly. "Your memories of our language and this meeting will be gently removed, and you'll wake up tomorrow thinking you fell asleep at your desk while working late." Elena turned back to face Zaraki. "And if I say yes? Then you become something that has never existed before. A human ambassador to an alien civilization. You'll learn things about the universe that no other human knows. You'll help us understand your species better, and hopefully, you'll help your species prepare for eventual open contact." Elena looked at her desk covered with photographs of ancient tablets, at her computer screen still showing her translation notes, at the coffee-stained books that had been her constant companions for so many years. Everything in this room represented her old life, the quiet, scholarly existence she had always known. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked. Zaraki's skin showed a flicker of urgency. "Not long. My people expect me to report back soon. If I don't return with the decision, they'll assume something went wrong and send a team to handle the situation their way." Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, Zaraki was watching her with those deep, ancient eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of stars. "Before I decide," Elena said, "I need to know one more thing. If I do this, will I still be human?" Zaraki's expression softened, and her skin shifted to a warm, reassuring color. "You'll be more human than ever before," she said. "You'll just understand what it means to be human in a universe that's much bigger and more wonderful than you ever imagined." Elena made her decision that night, and it changed everything. Over the next 3 weeks, her life became something she never could have imagined. Every evening after her regular university classes, she would return to her office and wait. Exactly 9 p.m., the air would begin to shimmer, and Zaraki would step through the dimensional portal like she was walking through an invisible door. At first, Elena could barely concentrate during these meetings. The wonder of talking to someone from another world was overwhelming. But gradually she began to see Zaraki not just as an alien, but as a friend. Despite coming from different species and different dimensions, they had more in common than Elena had expected. Both were scholars who loved learning about different cultures and languages. Both spent most of their time alone, buried in books and research. And both had always felt like outsiders in their own worlds. Elena because her colleagues thought her research was pointless, and Zaraki because she questioned her people's strict rules about avoiding contact with other species. "My people think I'm too curious for my own good," Zaraki said one evening, as she sat cross-legged on Elena's office floor, her skin showing the soft blue color that Elena had learned meant contentment. "They say I ask too many questions about things that don't concern us." Elena laughed, nearly spilling her coffee. "That sounds familiar. My department head keeps telling me to focus on more practical research. He says studying dead languages won't help anyone in the modern world." "But that's exactly the problem," Zaraki said, her skin shifting to a more intense golden color that showed excitement. "Your people don't realize that language isn't just about communication. It shapes the way you think, the way you see reality, the way you connect with others." This was something Elena had always believed but could never prove to her skeptical colleagues. "Exactly. When I learned your ancestral language, it didn't just give me new words. It gave me new ways of thinking. I started seeing connections between things that I never noticed before." Zaraki nodded eagerly. "That's what I've been trying to explain to my elders. Your mind was able to grasp quantum linguistic concepts that most of my own people struggle with. That suggests humans have cognitive abilities that we've been underestimating." Over their evening meetings, Elena learned about Zaraki's world and the problems her people faced. The Cathera civilization was incredibly advanced in technology and science, but they had lost something important along the way. Their language had become so abstract and mathematical that they rarely expressed emotions directly anymore. "We can discuss the theoretical nature of joy," Zaraki explained sadly. "But we've forgotten how to simply say, 'I am happy.' and mean it with our whole hearts. Our conversations are efficient but cold. We share information but not feelings. Elena found this heartbreaking. But you don't seem cold to me. You show emotions through your skin colors, and I can hear feelings in your voice when you speak. That's because I've been studying human languages and cultures for years, Zaraki said. I learned emotional expression by watching your people from a distance. Most of my kind have forgotten how to do what comes naturally to you. This gave Elena an idea. What if we could teach each other? I could help you understand human emotional expression, and you could help me understand more about quantum thinking and dimensional science. Zaraki's skin practically glowed with excitement. Do you think that would work? Let's find out, Elena said. Their cultural exchange began with simple things. Elena taught Zaraki about human poetry, showing her how humans used language not just to convey information, but to create beauty and express deep feelings. She read her favorite poems aloud, explaining how the rhythm and sound of words could make people feel joy, sadness, or wonder. Zaraki was fascinated. Your people use language like music, she said. Each word has meaning, but the way you combine them creates something beyond the sum of its parts. In return, Zaraki taught Elena about Cathara science and philosophy. She explained how her people understood the universe as interconnected layers of reality, where everything affected everything else across multiple dimensions. Elena's mind stretched to grasp these concepts, but the ancient language she had learned helped her think in the circular patterns necessary to understand them. Imagine that every action you take creates ripples not just in your world, but in parallel worlds that exist alongside yours, Zaraki explained. My people learned to see these connections, which is why we became so careful about interfering with other species' development. Elena began to understand why the Kithra had withdrawn from Earth. You could see all the possible consequences of your actions, so you became paralyzed by the responsibility. Exactly, Zaraki said. We became so focused on avoiding harm that we stopped taking any meaningful action at all. We observe, we analyze, but we rarely connect. As the weeks passed, Elena noticed changes in herself. The quantum thinking patterns she was learning from Zaraki were affecting how she saw everything. She began to notice connections between her students' questions that helped her become a better teacher. She started seeing patterns in her research that revealed new insights about human linguistic evolution. But the most surprising change was in her ability to understand people's emotions. The ancient language had concepts for feelings that humans experienced but had never named. Learning to think in multiple dimensions helped Elena see the complex layers of what people were really trying to communicate. Meanwhile, Zaraki was changing, too. Spending time with Elena was teaching her to express emotions more directly. Her skin colors became more vivid and varied. Her voice carried warmth and humor that had been missing when they first met. You're teaching me to be more alive, Zaraki told Elena one evening. My people focus so much on understanding everything intellectually that we've forgotten how to feel things with our hearts. And you're teaching me to think bigger than I ever imagined possible, Elena replied. I used to see my research as solving puzzles. Now I see it as exploring the connections that link all consciousness together. Their friendship was healing something in both of them. Elena was no longer the lonely scholar who doubted her own work. Zaraki was no longer the questioning outsider who felt disconnected from her own people, but their time together was about to face its biggest challenge yet. One evening, Zaraki arrived looking troubled, her skin a dark, stormy gray that Elena had never seen before. What's wrong? Elena asked immediately. My people have discovered our meetings, Zaraki said quietly. The elders know I've been making unauthorized contact with you. Elena felt her heart sink. What does that mean? It means tomorrow night. I have to bring you before the Kithara High Council, Zaraki said. They want to decide what to do with both of us. Elena stared at her friend, realizing that everything they had built together was about to be put to the ultimate test. Would the wisdom and connection they had found in each other be enough to convince an entire civilization to change their ancient policies? Will you come with me? Zaraki asked. I know it's dangerous, but I think you might be our only hope of bridging the gap between our worlds. Elena looked around her familiar office one more time, knowing that whatever happened next would determine not just her own future, but possibly the future of human-alien relations. Of course I'll come, she said. We're in this together now. Elena barely slept that night. She kept thinking about what Zaraki had told her. Tomorrow she would step into another dimension and stand before beings whose wisdom spanned thousands of years. They would decide whether her friendship with Zaraki was a dangerous mistake or the beginning of something extraordinary. When evening came, Elena waited in her office with sweaty palms and a racing heart. She had changed into her best professional outfit, though she had no idea if it would matter to alien beings. When the familiar shimmer began to fill the air, she took a deep breath and tried to look braver than she felt. Zaraki stepped through the portal, but this time she wasn't alone. 2 other Kithara accompanied her, both taller and more imposing than Zaraki. Their skin showed deep, serious colors that Elena interpreted as stern authority. They looked at Elena with expressions that were difficult to read but definitely not friendly. "These are council guards," Zaraki explained quietly. "They're here to escort us both to the hearing." Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. She followed Zaraki through the portal and suddenly found herself in a place that defied everything she thought she knew about reality. The Kithara council chamber existed in what Zaraki had called the space between worlds. There was no sky overhead, just swirling patterns of light that reminded Elena of the northern aurora. The ground beneath her feet felt solid, but looked like polished starlight. In the distance, she could see structures that seemed to be built from crystallized music and liquid mathematics, but it was the council members themselves that truly took Elena's breath away. 7 Kithara sat in a semicircle on seats that floated just above the glowing floor. Each one was ancient beyond human understanding, their skin showing complex patterns of color that shifted like slow kaleidoscopes. When they looked at Elena, she felt like they were seeing not just her present self but every choice she had ever made, and every possibility her future might hold. The eldest council member spoke first, using the ancient language that Elena now understood fluently. "Human Elena Vasquez, you have learned the forbidden tongue of our ancestors and formed an unauthorized bond with one of our people. This violates protocols that have protected both our species for millennia." Elena's knees felt weak, but she forced herself to stand straight. "Honored elders, I never intended to violate your protocols. I was simply trying to understand the beautiful language I found on ancient tablets. Your intentions matter less than the consequences," another council member said coldly. "Knowledge of our existence could cause panic among your people. Wars have been fought over far less." Elena glanced at Zaraki, who gave her an encouraging look, despite the obvious danger. They were both in. Taking courage from her friend's support, Elena stepped forward. "With respect, honored ones, I believe you're underestimating humanity," Elena said, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "Yes, some of my people might react with fear or aggression to learning about your existence, but many others would react with wonder, curiosity, and a desire to learn." The council members exchanged looks that Elena couldn't interpret. Their skin colors shifted in patterns that seemed like a conversation conducted in visual signals. "You speak boldly for someone whose species still wages wars over differences in skin color and religious beliefs," the eldest said. Elena felt a flash of anger at the dismissive tone, but she channeled it into determination instead. "You're right, that humans have many flaws. We can be violent, selfish, and narrow-minded, but we're also capable of incredible growth and change. 100 years ago, humans couldn't fly. 50 years ago, we couldn't communicate instantly across the globe. 20 years ago, most people couldn't access the sum of human knowledge from a device in their pocket." She paused, looking directly at each council member in turn. "We evolve quickly because we're not afraid to make mistakes and learn from them. That's something your people seem to have forgotten how to do." The chamber fell silent except for the soft musical sounds that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Elena realized she might have just insulted beings who could erase her from existence with a thought, but it was too late to take the words back. Zaraki spoke up, her voice trembling but determined. Elena is proof that humans are ready for contact. She learned our ancestral language not through advanced technology, but through intuition and emotional intelligence. She grasped quantum thinking concepts that many of our own people struggle with, and in the process of teaching her about our science, she taught me something equally valuable. Zaraki continued, her skin showing colors of deep conviction. She reminded me how to feel joy, wonder, and genuine connection with another being. Our people have become so focused on intellectual perfection that we've lost touch with the emotional wisdom that makes life meaningful. The eldest council member leaned forward. You suggest that this human could teach us something we need to learn? I believe she already has, Zaraki said. Elena has shown me that true wisdom isn't just about understanding how things work. It's about understanding why they matter. Elena found her voice again. Your people withdrew from Earth because you were afraid of causing harm. But isolation can be harmful too. You've become so careful about affecting other species that you've stopped growing yourselves. She gestured toward Zaraki. Your own young people are hungry for connection and meaning. They're studying other cultures because they sense something missing in their own. Maybe it's time to consider that careful, limited contact could benefit both our species. The council members' skin patterns shifted more rapidly now, their silent visual conversation becoming more intense. Elena waited, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Finally, the eldest spoke again. You propose to become a bridge between our worlds, but bridges carry traffic in both directions. Are you prepared for humans to learn about us gradually while also helping us reconnect with emotional wisdom we have lost? Helena thought about her quiet life as a university professor, about the students who would never know their teacher was humanity's first alien ambassador, about the incredible responsibility of keeping such momentous secrets. Then she looked at Zaraki and thought about the friendship that had already changed both their lives. Yes, Elena said firmly. I'm ready. The council deliberated for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. When they reached their decision, the eldest's skin shifted to colors Elena had never seen before, complex patterns that somehow conveyed both hope and caution. We will permit this experiment, the elder announced. Elena Vasquez will serve as humanity's secret liaison, learning our ways while teaching selected humans about our existence. Zaraki will be her counterpart, working to help our people remember the emotional wisdom we have neglected. Elena felt relief flood through her, followed immediately by excitement and terror in equal measure. But know this, the elder continued, the future of both our species may depend on the success of this bridge you are building. Do not take this responsibility lightly. 6 months later, Elena stood in a small conference room at the university, looking at 5 carefully chosen colleagues who had gathered for what they thought was a routine linguistics seminar. These were people she had selected over weeks of careful observation, scholars who were open-minded, discreet, and capable of handling extraordinary information without panic. Before we begin, Elena said, her hand resting on a folder containing photos of the ancient tablets, I need you to understand that what you're about to learn will change your lives forever. In another dimension, Zaraki stood before a group of young Cathara who had volunteered to participate in what their elders called the Emotion Project. In her hands, she held a book of human poetry that Elena had given her. Today, Zaraki told them, we're going to learn about something our ancestors knew but we have forgotten, how to let our hearts guide our minds toward wisdom. Both women had become bridges between worlds, proving that the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or knowledge, but the simple courage to reach across impossible divides and say, let's learn from each other. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in thousands of years, both species were growing again, connected by friendship and guided by hope.